see you. Coming by.
Have a seat. We've got so much to talk to you about for space flights, but you were a lousy student as a kid. How did you even get to the point where you are today?
Yeah, so I think when people think of astronauts, they think of this overachiever, the best student in the class, and I was the exact opposite. I couldn't pay attention, spent more time looking out the window than I ever did paying attention to my teachers.
Right. Didn't like science class?
I didn't like anything that had to do with school. And, I went to college because it was expected of me to do that.
Okay.
And then one day I'm walking across the college campus and I go into the bookstore to buy like gum or something, not a book. I don't know if I ever bought a book before.
Right.
But I saw this book on the shelf and it had a really cool cover, red, white, and blue, a title that, really caught my imagination and attention. And I picked it up, started looking through it, took my gum money.
What was the title?
The Right Stuff.
Okay.
By Tom Wolfe. And I read the book and I thought, I felt like I had things in common with these guys with one exception. I couldn't pay attention, do my homework. And I thought, if I could fix that, maybe I could be an astronaut someday. I mean, it wasn't easy, teaching myself how to pay attention and study. It was actually a pretty hard thing to do, but, slowly by slowly, I got better. And, I know an 18-year-old kid decides he's going to be an astronaut. That's a giant leap.
Yeah.
Really what it was a bunch of small, yet hard, but manageable steps to get there. And then, fast forward 18 years later, and I was the first guy in my astronaut class to fly in space.
Speaking of flying in space, which is incredible, you spent the year in space, which is huge. How did that whole experiment come about? Because I know it was you and your twin brother. What, did NASA just say, hey, look, we've got twins. Come on, guys.
Actually not. So I was assigned to this flight, and then it wasn't until after they made the decision that I would be the guy to do it that I was getting briefed for some, a media event. And I asked the question, as they were briefing me, does NASA have any plans to do any experiments with me and my brother being identical twins? And they had all this data on my brother for years, and this was a really unique opportunity. And they said no. And then they said, but if we did, like a genetic study, would you be interested? Because the government is not allowed to ask their employees to participate in genetic research. So it never came up until I brought up the
You
subject.
said something.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
What were the effects of having you in space for that amount of time and your brother here?
I got smarter and more handsome.
I bet you your brother might disagree with that.
So, in space for long periods of time, our bodies go through changes, a lot like we age. We lose bone mass, muscle mass. There's effects on our immune system. But the big thing we were studying with my brother and I was the genetic effects, because we were 99.9% identical genetically. So we were looking at, how does this radiation environment that we're living in, the stress, how does that affect us at a genetic level? And they did find some interesting differences.
Right. In that year you were in space, was there ever a moment where you thought, I want to go home? This is a long time, because you started off with a 7-day and then, 14 day or whatever it was, and then 149 days. Yeah. And then 340 days. I mean, that's a big jump from 149 days to 340. At some point between 149 and 340, did you go, what did I sign up for?
Yeah, I think the first day I floated into the space station, and I had been there like 4 years prior, and it looked the same, sounded the same, smelled the same. I thought, this is a stupid thing to be doing. But actually, it was really one of the most rewarding, definitely the most rewarding professional experience of my life. I felt like I was very well prepared for it, having flown a 6-month flight previously. I think I paced myself appropriately. But the worst thing about being in space is that if something happens with your family on Earth, you can't come home.
Right.
Right.
And I experienced that on my previous flight when my sister-in-law, Gabby Giffords, was shot.
Yeah. I do want to get a little personal on a different note here for just a minute with you. So you're up in space, your girlfriend's back here on Earth, NASA's watching your every move. Is it tough? You don't have a moment of intimacy or privacy at all for a year. How do you deal with that? Is that grueling? just curious.
That's a real personal question.
Have you been asked that one before?
Never, not on TV.
Well, hey,
you just deal with it.
We're
we're well trained.
there you go. There's the answer, huh?
Yeah. What would you say would be the biggest thing that you learned from being in space for that year? I know you say that you think it's possible that we can go to Mars.
So the biggest thing I've learned is that, you know, especially when I was leaving the space station for the last time, and this is a space station that I've spent 500 days of my life on. I'm looking out the window and I know I'm never going to see this again. If we can do this, we can do anything. You know, if we want to go to Mars, we can go to Mars. If we want to cure cancer and put the resources behind it, we can do that. If we want to fix the problems with our environment, you know, challenges we have in this country or challenges that, you know, people may have in their lives, I was absolutely inspired after spending a year in space that if we can dream it, we can do it.
Right. There are certain rituals, too, that you had taking off from Russia. What were these rituals taking off from Russia?
You know, there's, you know, the Russians are a little superstitious, but, you know, in the U.S. we have some, you know, superstitious kind of rituals, too. The Russians ones are, you know, a little bit different. We always watch the same movie the night before launch because when the Russian space program had an accident, the next crew watched that movie and they came home safely, so you always watch the same movie.
Okay.
You always pee on the tire on the way to the launch pad, the tire of the bus.
Yeah.
At the same spot that Yuri Gagarin peed on the tire. And some things like that.
And I heard that you wanted to watch Gravity? Is that
in
true?
space, yeah.
Why?
I just wanted to see how the rendering of the space station compared to the real space station while you're there and how it looked. And I thought it would be funny.
So, you know, I want to bring up Russia just for a quick sec, because you know I know that's the only way now that we can get to the International Space Station is with the Russian Soyuz capsule, and we don't have the best political relationship with the Russians right now. In some cases, you relied on Russians with your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do the same issues, the political issues that exist down here on Earth, exist up in space?
Absolutely not. And you know, that's one of the great things about the space station program. I mean, we demonstrate that we can do something incredibly complicated, something that we don't believe, that we both believe in strongly, work together as a team and be successful. And our relationship with the cosmonauts in space is not affected at all by any personal conflict because, you know, we're friends, we're colleagues, we have to rely on each other literally for our lives in certain cases. My crewmate Misha Kornienko, the Russian guy I spent a year in space with, he said, you know, if our countries want to solve their differences, all we need to do is put our two presidents in space together for a year.
Final question, we're out of time. What's better, life on Earth or life in space?
Life on Earth.
Life on Earth.
Done deal.
Yeah.
All right, Scott Kelly, good to see you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Endurance and My Journey to the Stars, available right now everywhere. Going to take a quick break.